The twin suns of Karis Prime blazed mercilessly over the blood-red sands of the Deathworld arena. Even through the environmental filters of the massive dome, the heat was palpable, a constant reminder that this planet was never meant to sustain life. Yet, here they were, thousands of spectators from across the hegemony, their excited chatter echoing through the arena as they waited for blood to be spilled. Elias stood in the preparation chamber, his eyes closed, fingers wrapped around the hilt of his plasma sword. The weapon was deactivated, but he could feel its potential energy humming beneath his palm. 7 years as a gladiator in this hellhole had taught him to become one with his weapon, to feel its rhythm before igniting its deadly blue flame. 3 minutes, Earthborn, a mechanical voice announced. Elias opened his eyes, the steel-gray irises reflecting nothing of the storm within. At 32, his face bore the scars of countless battles, the most prominent one running from his left temple to his jaw. His close-cropped black hair was peppered with gray, making him look older than his years. The standard-issue combat suit hugged his muscular frame, reinforced at vital points but deliberately leaving other areas exposed. The audience preferred seeing blood. "Combatant status?" the voice inquired. "Ready," Elias replied, his voice a low rumble that betrayed his Earthborn origin. Earth was long gone now, destroyed in the last war, but its scattered children still carried its memory in their voices, in their blood. The wall before him slid open, revealing the vast expanse of the arena. The crowd roared as Elias stepped onto the blood-red sand, their faces a blur in the stands. He didn't look at them. They weren't people to him, just a faceless mass that cheered for death. "Ladies and gentlemen of the hegemony," the announcer's voice boomed through the arena. "Welcome to the 273rd day of the grand season. Today, we present you a special match. The undefeated champion of the Western Quadrant, the Earthborn Slayer, Elias." The crowd's roar intensified. Elias remained still, staring at the gate on the opposite side of the arena. In a few moments, it would open, and another combatant would emerge. Someone else trapped in this hell, fighting for survival or glory or whatever delusion kept them going. "And his challenger," the announcer continued, his voice dripping with excitement. "The rising star of the Eastern Quadrant, the Blue Death, the Shadow Blade, Jalira." The opposite gate slid open with a metallic groan, and a figure emerged from the shadows. Elias squinted against the glare of the twin suns, his breath catching in his throat as he recognized the silhouette. Slender but strong, clad in blue armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The woman moved with a grace that belied her deadly purpose. Her face was partially obscured by a combat mask, but Elias didn't need to see her features to know who she was. The distinctive, silvery white hair cropped short at the sides but flowing longer at the top. The particular way she carried herself. It couldn't be anyone else. "Jalira," he whispered, the name escaping his lips before he could stop it. 7 years ago. She had been a child, a 12-year-old princess of the Vani people, trembling in fear as he cut down her captors. 7 years ago. He had made a promise to protect her, to return her to her people. 7 years ago, he had failed. And now, she stood before him in the Deathworld arena, her plasma sword igniting with a hiss, its blue flame a mirror of his own. "Begin!" the announcer commanded, and the crowd went wild. Jalira moved first, covering the distance between them with inhuman speed. Her sword arced through the air, aimed at his neck. Elias parried just in time, the clash of plasma against plasma, sending sparks flying. The force of her attack pushed him back, his boots digging into the sand. "Jalira," he said again, louder this time, trying to reach her through the combat mask. Her response was another attack, more vicious than the first. Her blade whirled in a complex pattern, testing his defenses. Elias defended, but didn't counterattack. He couldn't. Not against her. "You remember me," she said, Her voice altered by the mask, but still recognizable. There was no warmth in it, only cold fury. Good. I want you to know exactly who's killing you. She pressed her attack, driving him back toward the arena wall. Her technique was flawless, each strike flowing into the next. She had been trained well. I thought you were dead, Elias managed between parries. They told me your ship was destroyed. Lies! Jalira snarled, her blade coming dangerously close to his face. You left me. You promised to protect me, and you left me. The accusation hit harder than any physical blow. Elias faltered, and Jalira's blade sliced through his armor, cutting a shallow line across his chest. The crowd cheered at the first blood. Pain cleared Elias's mind. He counterattacked, not to hurt but to create distance. Their blades locked, faces inches apart. I searched for you, he said, his voice low and intense. For years, I searched. They told me you were dead. Something flickered in her eyes, doubt, perhaps, or a memory. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by renewed fury. She broke the blade lock with a twist and kicked him hard in the chest, sending him stumbling backward. 7 years in hell because of you, she spat. 7 years of pain and betrayal and learning how to kill. And now, finally, I get to thank you properly. The arena faded around Elias as memory overtook him. 7 years ago, Vanni Royal Palace, planet Lysithea. This way, princess? Elias grabbed the small hand of the Vanni princess, pulling her through the smoke-filled corridor. Explosions rocked the palace, pieces of ornate ceiling crashing down around them. The coup had been swift and brutal. The royal guards, those who hadn't been subverted, lay dead throughout the palace. 12-year-old Jalira stumbled, her silver-white hair matted with dust and blood. Not her own, thankfully. Her ceremonial robes were torn and blackened by smoke. My parents, she coughed, trying to pull back toward the throne room. Dead, Elias said bluntly, continuing to pull her along. There was no time for gentleness. Everyone in the throne room is dead. If you don't come with me now, you'll join them. Tears streamed down her face, cutting clean tracks through the grime. But she stopped resisting and followed him. Elias had been hired as additional security for the coronation ceremony. A standard contract. Good money for standing around looking intimidating. He hadn't expected an actual coup. They reached a service corridor, less ornate but also less watched. Elias pressed his palm against a hidden panel, revealing a narrow escape tunnel. How did you know about this? Jalira asked, her voice small but surprisingly steady. It's my job to know, he replied, ushering her inside. Stay quiet now. The tunnel was dark and smelled of damp stone, a stark contrast to the opulence of the palace above. They moved quickly, Elias's enhanced vision guiding them through the darkness. The princess's small hand clutched tightly in his. Who are you? She whispered, after several minutes of silent movement. Elias, security consultant. You're an Earthborn. Yes. My father said Earthborns are dangerous, unpredictable. Elias almost smiled at that. Right now, that's working in your favor, princess. The tunnel ended at a small spaceport used for deliveries and staff transportation. Elias had memorized the layout of the palace and its surroundings before taking the job, a habit that had saved his life more than once. There, he pointed to a small transport ship. That's our way out. They were halfway across the tarmac when plasma fire erupted around them. Elias shoved Jalira behind a cargo container and drew his sword, activating it with a thought. The blue plasma blade hummed to life. Stay down, he ordered, then moved to engage their attackers. There were 3 of them, palace guards in uniform, but their insignias marked them as part of the coup. Elias didn't waste time trying to reason with them. These men had betrayed their oaths, murdered their king and queen. They deserved no mercy. The first died without even seeing Elias properly, the plasma blade severing his head with surgical precision. The second managed to fire his weapon, The bolt, sizzling past Elias's ear. Elias responded by driving his blade through the man's chest. The third attacker, seeing his companions fall so quickly, turned to flee. Elias's thrown dagger found the back of his neck before he'd taken 3 steps. Jalira was watching, her violet eyes wide but dry. The Vani were a proud people, and even their children were taught to face death with dignity. "You killed them," she said, a simple observation without judgment. "They would have killed you," Elias replied, retrieving his dagger and wiping it clean. "Come on, we need to move." The transport ship was unlocked. Another stroke of luck. Elias helped Jalira inside and strapped her into the co-pilot's seat before taking the controls. "Where are we going?" she asked as the engines hummed to life. "Somewhere safe," Elias promised, initiating the launch sequence. "I'll protect you, Princess. I'll get you back to your people, the loyal ones. You have my word." As the ship lifted off, more plasma fire peppered its hull. Elias swore under his breath and accelerated hard, pushing the small vessel to its limits. They broke atmosphere in record time, the blue-green world of Lysithea falling away beneath them. "We made it," Jalira breathed, a hint of a smile touching her lips for the first time. The explosion came without warning. One moment they were safely in orbit. The next, the ship was spinning, alarms blaring. A larger vessel had appeared on their sensors, a hegemony cruiser. "Hang on!" Elias shouted, strapping himself in and fighting for control of the damaged transport. "What's happening?" Fear had finally broken through Jalira's royal composure. "We're under attack. The coup leaders must have hegemony support." Elias's mind raced. This changed everything. If the hegemony was involved, nowhere in this system would be safe. Another hit rocked the ship, and a section of the cockpit blew out. Emergency shields snapped into place. But the damage was done. They were going down, caught in Lysithea's gravity well. "Escape pod," Elias decided, unbuckling himself and then Jalira. "Now!" He half-carried, half-dragged her to the escape pod bay. There was only one pod left. The others had already been jettisoned or destroyed. He shoved Jalira inside. "What about you?" she cried, grabbing his arm. "One-person pod," he explained quickly, programming the autopilot. "It'll take you to the nearest Vanni outpost. Ask for Ambassador Kelt. He's loyal to your family. He'll protect you." "No!" Jalira's grip tightened. "You promised! You said you'd protect me!" "And I am." Elias gently but firmly removed her hand. "I'll find another way out. I'll find you again, Princess. I promise." Tears filled her eyes as the pod door began to close. "Elias, please!" "Stay alive, Jalira," he said, the last words she would hear from him. "I'll find you." The pod ejected, streaking away from the dying ship. Elias watched it go, hoping the hegemony cruiser would ignore such a small target. Then he turned to face his own survival, knowing the odds were not in his favor. The memory faded as Jalira's blade sliced through the air where his head had been a second before. Elias rolled away, coming up in a defensive stance. "I looked for you," he repeated, more desperate now. "They told me your pod was intercepted, that you were dead. Ambassador Kelt confirmed it." "Kelt?" Jalira laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "Kelt was the one who sold me to the arena. He was part of the coup all along." The revelation hit Elias like a physical blow. He'd trusted Kelt, believed him when he said Jalira had been killed. For months after his own capture and consignment to the arena, he'd mourned her, adding her to the long list of people he'd failed to save. "I didn't know," he said, his voice hollow. "Jalira, I swear to you, I didn't know." "Lies come easily to an Earthborn, don't they?" she snarled, advancing on him again. "Did they pay you well to betray me? Or was it just the thrill of it?" Their blades met again, the clash resonating through the arena. The crowd was going wild, feeding on their emotional combat like psychic vampires. Elias fought defensively, trying to find an opening, not to hurt Jalira, but to make her listen. "I was captured too," he said between strikes. "I've been fighting in these arenas for 7 years, just like you." "Not like me," Jalira retorted, her attacks becoming more aggressive. "I was a child who trusted you." Her blade slipped past his guard, scorching his arm. Elias hissed in pain but didn't counterattack. He couldn't bring himself to hurt her, even now. "Enough talk," Jalira declared, pressing her advantage. "Die with some dignity, Earthborn." Her next attack was a feint, designed to make him block high while she struck low. It was a move he'd seen before, but never executed with such speed and precision. Elias twisted, avoiding the worst of it, but her blade still cut deep into his side. He stumbled, dropping to one knee. The crowd roared its approval. First blood had been drawn, and they sensed the kill was coming. Jalira circled him, her blade held at the ready. "Any last words?" "Elias?" she asked, using his name for the first time. There was something in her voice, a hint of uncertainty, perhaps, or reluctance. Elias looked up at her, blood seeping through his fingers where he pressed them against his wound. "I'm sorry I failed you, Princess," he said simply. "But I never betrayed you. Never." Jalira raised her blade for the killing stroke. The arena held its collective breath, and then, instead of striking, she paused. "Match concluded," the announcer's voice boomed suddenly. "Combatants, stand down." Confusion rippled through the crowd. Jalira didn't lower her weapon, her eyes still locked with Elias's. "A spectacular first round," the announcer continued. "But we'll save the final blow for tomorrow's grand finale. Return to your quarters, combatants." Guards entered the arena, plasma rifles trained on both Elias and Jalira. Slowly, reluctantly, Jalira deactivated her blade. Without another word, she turned and walked back toward her gate, leaving Elias bleeding on the sand. As medical droids rushed to stabilize him, Elias watched her retreating form. Something had changed in those final moments. He had seen it in her eyes, doubt. It wasn't much, but it was something. And tomorrow, he would have one more chance to make her believe the truth. The medical bay hummed with quiet efficiency as droids repaired Elias's wounds. The cut to his side had been deep, but not life-threatening. Jalira had been holding back, whether she admitted it to herself or not. "Quite a performance out there," a voice said from the doorway. Elias turned his head to see Corrin, a Catherian with striped fur and feline features. One of the few people in this hellhole Elias might call a friend. "Not now, Corrin," Elias muttered, wincing as a medical droid sealed his wound. The Catherian entered anyway, moving with the fluid grace of his species. "The whole arena is buzzing. Nobody's seen you fight so defensively before. The Shadow Blade had you. Her name is Jalira." "I know. That's what I came to tell you." Corrin glanced at the medical droids, then lowered his voice. "She's not just any opponent, is she?" Elias sighed. There was no point in denial. "No, she's not. Care to explain why a Vani princess is trying to kill the man who supposedly saved her life 7 years ago?" Corrin's amber eyes gleamed with curiosity. "The story is legendary, you know. The last survivor of the Vani royal family, betrayed and murdered during her escape. Makes for great propaganda for the hegemony." "Propaganda is right," Elias said bitterly. "She wasn't murdered. She was sold to the arena, just like we were." "By whom?" "Ambassador Kelt. The same man who told me she was dead." Elias clenched his fist, old rage rekindling. "I trusted him. I believed him." Corrin nodded thoughtfully. "And now she thinks you were in on it." "Yes. Are you going to kill her tomorrow?" The question hung in the air. Elias stared at the ceiling, considering his answer carefully. "No," he said finally. "I won't kill her." "Then you'll die," Corin stated simply. She's not going to show you mercy twice. I'm not so sure about that. Elias remembered the hesitation in Jalira's eyes. There's still something there. Some part of her that remembers the truth. Corin sighed, running a hand through his striped mane. You Earthborns and your sentimentality. It'll be the death of your species. What's left of it, anyway? Maybe, Elias conceded. But it's also what makes us human. The medical droids finished their work and retreated. Elias sat up carefully, testing his newly repaired side. It would hold for tomorrow's fight, though it would still be tender. There's something else, Corin said, lowering his voice further. Something big is happening. Vorax has tripled security around the arena. Vorax was the arena master, a bloated, corrupt official who ran the Deathworld arena with an iron fist and an eye for profit. What kind of something? Elias asked, instantly alert. Not sure, but word is that tomorrow's matches are attracting some very high-profile spectators. Hegemony officials. Maybe even a council member. This was unusual. The Hegemony Council rarely concerned themselves with arena matters, considering them beneath their dignity. Why would they come for a regular match? Elias wondered aloud. Maybe it's not so regular. Corin gave him a meaningful look. A Vani princess versus the man who supposedly failed to save her? That's political theater at its finest. Elias nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. They're using us. Using our history to justify the Vani occupation. Exactly. See the treacherous Earthborn who betrayed the last Vani royal, now facing justice at her hands. Perfect propaganda. Anger burned in Elias's chest, but he forced it down. Anger wouldn't help him now. Clear thinking would. I need to talk to her, he decided. Before tomorrow's match. Corin laughed incredulously. Impossible. She'll be in the Eastern Quadrant contestant cells, heavily guarded. You'd never make it past the first checkpoint. Then I'll need help, Elias said, fixing Corin with a steady gaze. The Catherian's ears flattened against his head. No, absolutely not. I've worked too hard to stay alive in this place. Corin, she's the rightful heir to the Vani throne. If we could get her out of here, back to her people. Her people are subjugated. The Hegemony controls Lysithea now. Not all of it, Elias countered. There's still resistance in the outer territories. With Jalira as a symbol, they could rally enough support to challenge the Hegemony's control. Corin paced the small medical bay, his tail twitching anxiously. And where do we fit into this grand revolution? We're arena fighters. Elias. Expendable entertainment. We're more than that. You know we are. The Catherian stopped pacing and stared at Elias for a long moment. Finally, he sighed deeply. I must be as sentimental as an Earthborn, he muttered. Fine. I might know someone who can get you to the Eastern Quadrant. But if we're caught... We won't be, Elias assured him, though they both knew it was a promise he couldn't keep. The service tunnels beneath the Deathworld arena were a maze of pipes, conduits, and maintenance shafts. They were also dangerously hot, cooling systems focused on the arena proper and the spectator areas, not these forgotten passageways. Elias crawled through a particularly narrow section, sweat pouring down his face. Behind him, Zeph, a young Traxian maintenance worker, whispered directions. Left at the next junction, then straight for 20 meters. There's a service hatch that leads to the Eastern Quadrant, holding cells. Zeph was barely out of adolescence, his gray skin still showing the mottled patterns of youth. He hero-worshipped Elias, like many of the younger arena workers, seeing in him some romanticized ideal of resistance against the Hegemony. Guards, Elias whispered back. 2 at the entrance to the cell block, but they rotate shifts at midnight. There's a 3-minute window, when only 1 guard is present. Elias nodded, impressed by the young Traxian's thoroughness. And you're sure Jalira is in cell 17? Positive. High-value contestants always get the same cells. Better amenities. They reached the junction and turned left, as instructed. The tunnel narrowed further, forcing Elias to wriggle forward on his stomach. His recently healed wound protested, but he ignored the pain. "Here," Zeph whispered, as they reached a small grate in the ceiling of the tunnel. "This leads to a maintenance closet just outside the cell block." Elias peered through the grate. The closet beyond was dark and appeared empty. "How much time until the guard rotation?" Zeph checked a small device on his wrist. 8 minutes. "Wait here," Elias instructed. "If I'm not back in 30 minutes, get yourself out. Don't wait for me."
"But—"
"That's an order, Zeph." Elias's tone brooked no argument. "Corin will look after you if anything happens to me." The young Traxian nodded reluctantly. Elias carefully removed the grate, then pulled himself up into the closet. It was cramped, filled with cleaning supplies and maintenance equipment. He found a service uniform hanging on a hook and quickly pulled it on over his own clothes. It wouldn't withstand close inspection, but it might get him past a cursory glance. After checking that the corridor outside was empty, Elias slipped out of the closet and moved toward the cell block entrance. As Zeph had predicted, 2 guards stood watch, looking bored and inattentive. Elias ducked into an alcove and waited, counting the minutes silently. Right on schedule. One of the guards checked his timepiece and said something to his companion, who nodded and walked away. The remaining guards stretched and yawned, clearly unhappy about being left alone. Elias approached confidently, head down, pushing a cleaning cart he'd borrowed from the closet. "Maintenance," he mumbled as he neared the guard. The guard barely glanced at him. "Bit late for cleaning, isn't it?" "Arena Master's orders," Elias replied, with just the right amount of resentment in his voice. "Special contestant in cell 17 needs fresh linens or something." This piqued the guard's interest. "The Shadow Blade? Lucky you. She's a beauty, that one. Deadly, but beautiful." Elias made a non-committal noise, keeping his face averted. "Go on then," the guard said, waving him through. "Don't take too long. Replacement will be here soon." "Won't be but a minute," Elias assured him, pushing his cart into the cell block. The cells in the eastern quadrant were indeed more luxurious than those in the western quadrant. Instead of bare metal boxes, these were actual rooms with proper beds, sanitation facilities, and even small sitting areas. All still cages, but gilded ones. Cell 17 was at the end of the corridor. There was no guard at the door. Unusual, but fortunate. Elias approached cautiously, alert for any sign of a trap. The door had a standard electronic lock. Nothing he couldn't bypass with the right tools. From his pocket, he withdrew a small device Corin had provided, a universal keycard that had cost them both a month's worth of victory tokens. The lock disengaged with a soft click. Elias pushed the door open slowly, ready for anything. Jalira stood by the window, staring out at the red sands of Karis Prime. She had removed her combat armor and wore a simple blue tunic that accentuated her slender but muscular frame. Her silver-white hair gleamed in the light of the twin moons, visible through the window. She turned as the door opened, her hand moving to a concealed weapon. When she saw Elias, her violet eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in suspicion. "Guards!" she called out, her voice hard. "They can't hear you," Elias said quickly, closing the door behind him. "The cells are soundproofed. Standard procedure for high-value contestants." Jalira's hand remained on her hidden weapon. "How did you get in here? Why are you here?" "I needed to talk to you, without an audience." Elias stayed near the door, giving her space. "Tomorrow, in the arena, one of us is supposed to die. I'd prefer it wasn't either of us." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Planning to run away again, Elias?" "I never ran away from you, Jalira." He took a step forward, then stopped when she tensed. "I thought you were safe. I thought Kelt would protect you." So you said in the arena. Her voice was cold, but there was a hint of uncertainty in it now. Why should I believe you? Because it's the truth. And because I spent 3 years searching for you before I was captured and thrown into the arena myself. Elias's voice grew passionate. I never stopped looking, never stopped believing that somehow you might have survived, despite what Kelt told me. Jalira studied him, her expression unreadable. And what do you want now? To understand what happened to you, to make things right, if I can. She turned back to the window, her profile sharp against the night sky. Make things right, she repeated softly. It's too late for that. It's never too late, Elias insisted, taking another cautious step toward her. Jalira, your people still resist the hegemony. In the outer territories of Lysithea, they fight in your name, believing you're dead. If they knew you were alive. They'd what? Rise up? Overthrow the hegemony? She laughed again, the sound brittle. The hegemony is too powerful. My people are scattered, broken. Not broken. Never broken. Elias was closer now, close enough to see the faint scar at her temple, a wound she hadn't had as a child. The Vani are survivors. Like you. Jalira turned to face him fully, her eyes searching his. What happened to you after my escape pod launched? Elias sighed. The memory's still painful. I tried to pilot the damaged ship to safety, but it was too badly hit. I crash-landed on a small moon in the Lysithea system. Survived there for weeks before a salvage crew found me. They sold me to a labor camp, where I worked for almost 3 years before escaping. And then you looked for me? I never stopped looking, Elias corrected her. Even in the labor camp, I was gathering information, making contacts. When I escaped, I went straight to Kelt, who told me you were dead. He showed me debris from your escape pod, said it had been intercepted by hegemony forces. Jalira's expression softened slightly. The pod was intercepted, but not by hegemony forces directly, by privateers working for them. They recognized me and contacted Kelt, who paid them handsomely for my capture. And he sold you to the arena, Elias finished, disgust evident in his voice. Not immediately. First, he kept me as leverage, negotiating with both the resistance and the hegemony, playing both sides. When I was 15, I tried to escape, killed 2 of his guards in the process. A fierce pride flashed in her eyes. That's when he decided I was too dangerous to keep. The arena seemed the perfect solution. I'd either die there or become a spectacle, a warning to others. But you didn't die, Elias said softly. You became the Shadowblade. Survival is a powerful motivator, Jalira replied, her hand unconsciously moving to the scar at her temple. I learned quickly that the only way to stay alive was to be better than everyone else, more ruthless, more deadly. And now we're supposed to fight to the death for the hegemony's entertainment. Elias moved to stand beside her at the window, careful to maintain some distance. The last Vani Royal and the Earthborn who failed her. It's perfect propaganda. Jalira glanced at him sharply. What do you mean? Haven't you wondered why this match was arranged? Why now? After 7 years? Corin, a friend of mine, says high-ranking hegemony officials will be attending tomorrow. They're using us, Jalira, using our story to justify their continued occupation of Lysithea. Understanding dawned in her eyes. The treacherous Earthborn facing justice at the hands of the Vani princess he betrayed, she murmured. A narrative that portrays the hegemony as honorable, giving the princess her revenge. Exactly. Elias turned to face her fully. But we don't have to play our parts. We could escape, together, find the resistance, tell the true story. Jalira stared at him for a long moment, conflict evident in her expression. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed, a genuine laugh this time, with real amusement. What? Elias asked, confused. You think I arranged this match because I wanted revenge, she said, shaking her head. You think I've spent 7 years nurturing hatred for you. Haven't you? No, Elias. Jalira's expression grew serious again. I arranged this match because I need your help. Now it was Elias's turn to stare in confusion. My help? I've been planning an escape for months, she explained, lowering her voice even though they were alone. Not just for me, for all the arena fighters, the workers, everyone enslaved here. Tomorrow's match is the perfect distraction. Elias couldn't hide his shock. You're planning a mass breakout during our fight? Jalira nodded, a fierce light in her eyes. The arena will be packed. Security will be focused on the VIPs, and I have people in place throughout the facility, ready to act on my signal. People like who? Slaves, workers, even some of the guards who've been mistreated one too many times. Vorax isn't exactly beloved by his staff. She smiled grimly. 7 years is a long time to build a network. Elias, I didn't waste it plotting revenge against you. I was planning something much bigger. Elias processed this information, a new respect for Jalira blooming within him. The frightened child he'd rescued had grown into not just a warrior, but a leader. Why tell me this now? He asked finally. Why not just go through with your plan without warning me? Jalira's expression softened. Because I wasn't sure. About you. About what really happened. I needed to see your face when I accused you, to know if you were telling the truth. She stepped closer to him. And because if we're going to pull this off, I need you fighting with me, not against me. I'm with you, Elias said without hesitation. Always have been. For the first time, Jalira smiled at him, a real smile that transformed her face, reminding him of the brave child who'd faced her world's destruction with dignity. Then, let's give the hegemony a show they'll never forget. The arena was packed beyond capacity. News of the dramatic first round between the Earthborn and the Shadowblade had spread through the hegemony worlds like wildfire, drawing spectators from as far as the core systems. The VIP boxes were filled with high-ranking officials, their opulent clothing and jewels gleaming in the harsh light of the twin suns. In the preparation chamber, Elias checked his plasma sword one last time. The plan was risky, dependent on precise timing and the courage of people who had every reason to be afraid. But it was also the best chance any of them had ever had for freedom. Combatant status? The mechanical voice inquired. Ready, Elias replied, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his gut. The wall slid open, revealing the vast expanse of the arena. The crowd roared as Elias stepped onto the blood-red sand, even louder than the day before. He spotted Corin in the crowd, positioned near one of the emergency exits. The Catherian gave an almost imperceptible nod. Ladies and gentlemen of the hegemony, the announcer's voice boomed. Welcome to the grand finale of our special match. Yesterday, we witnessed the stunning reunion of the Earthborn Slayer and the Shadowblade. Today, one of them will fall forever on the sands of Deathworld. The opposite gate slid open, and Jalira emerged. Today, she wore no mask, her face visible to all. She looked magnificent in her blue armor, her silver-white hair gleaming, her violet eyes intense. The crowd went wild at the sight of her. Elias and Jalira approached the center of the arena, stopping a few paces apart. The announcer continued his hyperbolic introduction, but neither of them was listening. Their eyes met, a silent communication passing between them. Begin, the announcer commanded, and the crowd fell momentarily silent, anticipating the first clash. Elias moved first this time, a swift attack that Jalira parried easily. Their blades locked, bringing them close together. Ready, he whispered. Born ready, she replied, her eyes flashing with determination. They broke apart and began circling each other, their movements precise and calculated. To the audience, It looked like the opening gambits of a deadly duel. In reality, they were positioning themselves for what was to come. "I have a question, Shadowblade," Elias called out, his voice carrying across the arena. "Why me? Why arrange this match now, after all these years?" The crowd murmured, intrigued by this unexpected dialogue. In the VIP box, a hegemony official leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Isn't it obvious? Earthborn," Jalira replied, her voice equally clear. "You betrayed me, left me to die. This is justice." "Is it?" Elias attacked again, a series of swift strikes that drove Jalira back toward the arena wall. "Or is this theater for our hegemony masters? A pretty story to justify their occupation of your homeworld?" Shocked gasps rippled through the audience. This was not the script they had expected. "Careful, Elias," Jalira warned, though her eyes showed approval. "You're speaking treason." "I'm speaking truth," he countered. "Something rare in the hegemony." In the VIP box, the hegemony official was speaking urgently into a communicator. Guards around the arena perimeter began to move, hands on their weapons. "The truth?" Jalira laughed, playing her part perfectly. "You wouldn't know truth if it cut you down." She launched a counterattack, driving Elias back toward the center of the arena. Their blades clashed again and again, a dance of light and sound that captivated the audience despite the unscripted dialogue. They were close to the center now, where the sand was thickest, hiding the access panel to the arena's control systems. "Tell me, Jalira," Elias said, loud enough for all to hear. "Did you arrange this match because you hate me, or because you needed me?" This caught her off guard, genuine surprise flashing across her face. It wasn't part of their planned exchange. "What do you mean?" Elias pressed his attack, forcing her to defend. 7 years is a long time," he said, repeating her own words back to her. "Long enough to build a network, long enough to plan an escape, but not long enough to forget your first love." The crowd went utterly silent. In that moment of distraction, Elias's boot found the hidden access panel and pressed down hard. A soft click beneath the sand confirmed that it had activated. Jalira recovered quickly, her cheeks flushed. "Love," she scoffed, though her eyes told a different story. "I was a child." "A child who grew into a warrior," Elias acknowledged. "A leader. Someone I'd follow anywhere." He lowered his voice, just for her. 3 seconds. Jalira nodded imperceptibly. "Pretty words from a traitor," she declared loudly. Then, in a whisper, "Ready?" 1 second. "Not a traitor," Elias replied. "A friend. An ally." 2 seconds. "Prove it," Jalira challenged. 3. The arena lights flickered and died. Emergency systems kicked in immediately, but they provided only dim illumination. In that moment of confusion, Elias and Jalira moved as one, back to back, their plasma swords the brightest points of light in the darkened arena. "Now!" Jalira shouted, and chaos erupted. Throughout the arena, hidden Confederates sprang into action. In the slave pens, Zeph and his fellow Traxians overwhelmed their guards. In the control room, technicians who had been secretly supporting Jalira's cause locked down the VIP boxes, trapping the hegemony officials inside. And in the stands, Corin led a group of fighters in securing the emergency exits, ensuring they remained open for the escaping slaves. The crowd panicked, surging toward the exits in a terrified mass. Guards tried to maintain order, but they were outnumbered and unprepared for a coordinated rebellion. "This way!" Elias shouted to Jalira, pointing toward a service entrance that had been left unguarded in the confusion. They fought their way through the chaos, their plasma swords cutting down any guards who tried to stop them. Around them, other fighters and slaves were making their own bids for freedom, following the escape routes Jalira's network had prepared. "Corin!" Elias called out as they neared the exit. The Catherian appeared, leading a group of escaped fighters. "The Traxians have secured the hangar," Corin reported. "We have ships." "What about Vorax?" Jalira asked, her blade deflecting a plasma bolt fired by a desperate guard. "Locked in his own vault," Corin grinned, showing sharp feline teeth. "He'll have a long time to count his blood money before anyone finds him." They pushed through the service entrance into a long corridor beyond. Alarms were blaring throughout the facility, but the response was disorganized. Jalira's plan had worked perfectly. The guards were overwhelmed, unsure where to focus their efforts. "This is really happening," Jalira breathed, a mix of exhilaration and disbelief in her voice. "Did you doubt it would?" Elias asked, checking around a corner before signaling the all-clear. "Every day for 7 years," she admitted, "but not anymore." They reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. From the left branch came the sound of fighting, plasma fire, and shouting. "The main hangar," Corin explained. "Hegemony troops are putting up resistance." "We need a diversion," Elias decided. "Something to draw them away from the ships." Jalira nodded. "The reactor control room. It's down the right corridor. If we can trigger a containment alarm..." "They'd have to respond," Elias finished. "Reactor breach protocols override everything else." "I'll go to the hangar," Corin volunteered. "Help secure the ships. You two handle the diversion." Elias clasped the Catherian's arm. "Be careful, old friend." "Always am," Corin replied with a feline smile. "Besides, I have 8 more lives after this one." They parted ways. Corin heading left toward the hangar, while Elias and Jalira took the right corridor toward the reactor control room. The facility's alarms continued to wail, but the sound of fighting was becoming more distant. "How many do you think will make it out?" Elias asked as they ran. "Not all," Jalira replied grimly, "but more than would have without trying." The reactor control room was surprisingly unguarded. All available security personnel had been dispatched to contain the uprising in the arena and the hangar. Jalira approached the main console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Can you bypass the security protocols?" Elias asked, keeping watch at the door. "Already done," she replied, not looking up from her work. "Zeph gave me his access codes. He's been planning this with me for months." "The young Traxian? He never mentioned it." "He wouldn't have." Compartmentalization was essential. No one knew the full plan except me. Elias watched her work, impressed by her foresight and leadership. "You've changed," he observed. "The princess I knew was brave, but not a revolutionary." Jalira glanced up briefly. "That princess died the day her parents were murdered. What emerged from the ashes was something else entirely." She returned to the console. "There, containment breach alarm activated. We have 5 minutes before the system realizes it's a false alarm." Right on cue. A new alarm began to sound, deeper, more urgent than the security alarms. Throughout the facility, announcements in multiple languages ordered all personnel to evacuate immediately. "That should clear the way to the hangar," Jalira said, stepping away from the console. "Let's go." They retraced their steps to the junction, then headed toward the hangar. As they'd hoped, the corridor was now clear. The hegemony troops had abandoned their position at the first sound of the reactor alarm. The hangar was a scene of controlled chaos. Escaped fighters and slaves were boarding whatever vessels they could find, everything from small personal shuttles to medium-sized transport ships. Corin was directing the operation, assigning people to ships based on capacity and destination. "Elias! Jalira!" the Catherian called out when he spotted them. "We saved you the best ship." He pointed to a sleek vessel near the hangar doors. "Vorax's personal transport. Fastest thing in the quadrant, according to the specs." "Perfect," Jalira approved. "What's our status?" 3 ships already away," Corin reported. "No pursuit yet, they're too busy with the evacuation. But that won't last long." "We need to move quickly then," Elias said. "Once they realize the reactor alarm is false." A new alarm cut him off. "Attention all security personnel," a voice announced. "Reactor containment stable. This is a false alarm. Return to stations immediately. Repeat. Return to stations immediately. That was less than 5 minutes, Jalira frowned. Someone in security must have manually checked the reactor status, Elias surmised. We need to go. Now. They hurried toward Vorax's ship, joined by Zeph, who emerged from a crowd of Traxians. I'm coming with you, the young alien declared, his determination evident in his stance. It's going to be dangerous, Elias warned. We'll be the primary target once they realize who's on this ship. I know, Zeph replied simply. That's why you need me. I've been studying Vorax's ship for months. I know every system, every weakness, every strength. Elias looked to Jalira, who nodded. He's right. We need him. All right, Elias agreed. Let's go. The four of them boarded the ship, Zeph immediately taking the co-pilot seat beside Elias. Jalira and Corin secured the passenger compartment, ensuring everything was locked down for what promised to be a rough departure. Hangar doors are still open, Zeph observed as Elias powered up the engines. But not for long. Security protocols will override the evacuation once they realize what's happening. Then we don't give them time to think, Elias replied, pushing the throttle forward. The ship leapt forward with surprising speed, clearing the hangar doors just as they began to close. Behind them, more vessels were following, a ragtag fleet of escapees making a desperate bid for freedom. We're clear, Zeph announced triumphantly. Not yet, Elias cautioned, his eyes on the scanner. Hegemony patrol ships incoming. 3 of them, moving to intercept. Jalira appeared in the cockpit doorway. Can we outrun them? We're about to find out. Elias pushed the ship harder, aiming for the asteroid field that surrounded Karis Prime. Zeph, what's special about this ship that Vorax would keep it for himself? The young Traxian's hands flew over the controls. Enhanced engines, obviously, reinforced hull, and this. He pressed a sequence of buttons, and a hidden panel opened in the console, revealing a specialized control interface. What is that? Jalira asked, leaning forward for a better look. Stealth system, Zeph explained excitedly. Military grade, illegal for civilian use. It masks our energy signature, makes us nearly invisible to scanners. Activate it, Elias ordered, as soon as we reach the asteroid field. The patrol ships were gaining on them, but the asteroid field was close now. Elias piloted with precision, threading their vessel between the floating rocks with increasing speed. They're firing, Corin warned from the rear scanner station. Plasma bolts streaked past them, illuminating the space between asteroids with eerie blue light. Elias juked the ship, avoiding the worst of the barrage, but a glancing hit rocked their starboard side. Hull integrity at 90%, Zeph reported. We're still good. Entering dense asteroid zone now. Activate stealth, Elias commanded. Zeph engaged the system. The ship's lights dimmed momentarily as power was diverted to the stealth field. On the scanner, the patrol ship's movements became erratic. They had lost their target. It's working, Jalira breathed. They can't see us. Not for long, Elias cautioned. They'll switch to visual tracking, spread out to cover more area. We need to find a way out of this asteroid field that they won't expect. Zeph studied the navigation display. There, he pointed to a particularly dense cluster of asteroids. Behind that formation is a gap in the field. Too small for their ships to follow, but we might make it through. Might? Corin raised an eyebrow. It's our best option, Elias decided, altering course toward the asteroid cluster. The gap was indeed small, barely wider than their ship. Elias reduced to speed, maneuvering carefully through the narrow passage. The hull scraped against rock more than once, setting off proximity alarms throughout the vessel. Hull integrity at 85%, Zeph reported tensely. 78%, holding at 75%. Finally, they emerged on the other side of the asteroid field. Open space stretched before them, with Karis Prime falling away behind. We made it, Jalira said, allowing herself a small smile of triumph. Not quite, Elias corrected her. We still need to make the jump to hyperspace before they realize where we've gone. Zeph, plot a course for Haven's Reach. The young Traxian looked up in surprise. The independent colony? That's in unclaimed space, beyond hegemony control. Exactly, Elias nodded. It's where the Vani resistance has been gathering for years. It's time for Princess Jalira to return to her people. Jalira placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. And you? Will you come with me? Elias covered her hand with his own. Always. Zeph plotted the course, and Elias aligned the ship for the jump to hyperspace. Behind them, the other escaped vessels were following different paths, scattering to make pursuit more difficult. Ready for jump, Zeph announced. Do it, Elias ordered. The stars stretched into lines, and then they were gone, leaving Karis Prime and the Deathworld arena far behind. 3 months later, Haven's Reach colony. The ocean breeze ruffled Elias's hair as he stood on the balcony, watching the sun set over the western sea. Haven's Reach was a beautiful world, far from the blood-red sands and twin suns of Karis Prime. Its single yellow sun and vast blue oceans reminded him, somewhat painfully, of Earth. Credit for your thoughts, Jalira said, joining him at the railing. She wore simple clothing now, practical and comfortable, though she still carried herself with the dignity of royalty. Just thinking how different things are, he replied, smiling at her. 3 months ago, we were trying to kill each other in an arena. Now we're building something, she finished for him. Something better. The resistance had welcomed Jalira with open arms. The return of the lost princess had galvanized the scattered Vani refugees, giving them new hope and purpose. But Jalira had surprised everyone by declaring that her goal was not to reclaim the Vani throne, but to establish a new society, one where all species could live together without hegemony control. The council meeting went well? Elias asked, referring to the governing body that had been established for the growing colony. Very well, Jalira nodded. The integration program for the new arrivals is working. Even the former arena fighters are finding their place here. And Corin? How's his security force coming along? Efficiently, as you'd expect from a Catherian, Jalira smiled. He's turned those abandoned mining tunnels into a perfect defensive network. If the hegemony ever finds us, they'll regret it. Elias slipped an arm around her waist, drawing her close. They will find us eventually. You know that, right? Yes, she acknowledged. But by then, we'll be ready. Haven's Reach won't be alone. There are other independent colonies, other resistance groups. We're making contacts, building alliances. The beginning of something bigger, Elias mused. A real challenge to the hegemony. A future worth fighting for, Jalira agreed, resting her head against his shoulder. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars appear as darkness fell. So much had changed in 3 months. The scared princess and the battle-hardened mercenary were gone, replaced by 2 leaders, working toward a common goal. And something else had changed too. Something neither of them had expected back in the Deathworld arena. I meant what I said. You know, Elias said softly. During our second fight, about following you anywhere. Jalira looked up at him, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. I know, and I meant what I didn't say. What I couldn't say then. Which was? That I loved you, she said simply. Not just as a child loves her rescuer, but as a woman loves a man who sees her for who she truly is, who fights beside her instead of for her. Elias turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. I think I loved you from the moment you stepped into that arena, all fury and skill and determination, even when you were trying to kill me. He smiled wryly. I wasn't really trying, Jalira confessed with a small laugh. Not my hardest, anyway. I know. That's why I'm still here. Their lips met in a gentle kiss, a moment of peace in lives that had known too little of it. When they parted, Jalira's expression grew serious again. "Zeph received a transmission today," she said. "From Deathworld Arena." Elias's brow furrowed. "How? I thought we were being careful about communications." "We are. This came through one of the dead drops we established before leaving. It's from inside the arena." Jalira's eyes gleamed with excitement. "There's another uprising brewing. Elias, bigger than ours, inspired by what we did. The hegemony will crush it," Elias said, concern evident in his voice. "They've doubled security since our escape." "Maybe," Jalira conceded. "But maybe not. Either way, it's spreading. The idea that freedom is possible, that the hegemony isn't invincible, it's taking root, and ideas are harder to kill than people." Elias looked out at the peaceful colony stretching below them, a haven for the displaced and the defiant. What they had started here was just the beginning, a seed that, with nurturing, could grow into something powerful enough to challenge even the hegemony. "From the Deathworld Arena to a new beginning," he mused. "Not the path either of us would have chosen. But the one that brought us together," Jalira replied, squeezing his hand. "And the one that might just change everything." Above them, the stars of Haven's Reach glittered like possibilities, each one a potential future waiting to be claimed. For the princess and the warrior who had found each other against all odds, the hardest battles lay ahead. But for the first time in 7 years, they faced them not alone, but together, with hope, with purpose, and with love that had survived the crucible of the arena. And in the end, that might just be enough to change the fate of worlds.